Let's do it. Hey guys, I hope you're doing great. It's Laura here. Alem, if you're watching this vlog, I'm doing this for you. It's Alem saying that she's proud of me for finally doing this vlog because you guys, I was meant to do it ages ago, but I kept on procrastinating. I haven't been vlogging in so long. The last vlog I did, I was still in Australia. I don't know how to start this vlog because there are so many things I need to update you guys on. Where should I start? Maybe with a quick recap, I guess. So first of all, the travel back home was a nightmare. It was meant to take me 2 days to fly back to France, and it ended up being a 4 days trip. I was meant to do Sydney, Abu Dhabi, then have a layover of I think it was 3 or 4 hours, and then Abu Dhabi straight to Paris. And you guys, that did not happen as I planned. The first flight got cancelled, but we didn't know straight away. We found out 8 hours after that they had some sort of technical issue on the plane, and at that stage when we found out, it was super late. It was like 9:30 p.m. So I ended up having to stay an extra night in Sydney, and then in the morning when I woke up, lucky I checked my emails because they sent me my new flights, and that was Sydney, Melbourne, Abu Dhabi, Paris. So I had to rush to the airport, and then it was such a mess because I had to pay extra because I wasn't allowed to carry that much on the plane with the suitcase allowance that I had for the long flights with Emirates. Yeah, I flew with Emirates. So I had to pay extra for the flight with Virgin, which pissed me off because it's not my fault. You know, I didn't choose to do that extra flight to go to Melbourne. Anyways, the first flight was fine. And then once I was in Melbourne, the flight Melbourne-Abu Dhabi got delayed. So we took off 1 hour and a half later than expected, which means that I missed my connection Abu Dhabi, Paris, because there was only like an hour layover, which realistically was never gonna happen anyway. When they sent me my new itinerary, I was like, okay, that's gonna be short, but fingers crossed. But I didn't freak out too much. I was like, well, that's fine. At least I'm in Abu Dhabi. It's an international airport. It's huge. Surely there's heaps of planes going to Paris like once every couple of hours, right? And as soon as I landed in Abu Dhabi, they gave us our new flight tickets. And you guys, I had looked at my flight tickets. I thought I was gonna pass out. The dates of my flights were for the date after, and that was not to Paris, that was to Munich in Germany. I was like, what the actual Anyways, they gave us a hotel for the night. I think honestly that was the best part of the trip because that hotel was just next level. It was beautiful, it was huge. We had the gym, and just being able to take a shower, because you guys, I felt like I was smelling like just from dressing and running around everywhere, and when it was such a stressful trip. So I actually enjoyed that extra day in the hotel. Plus the food was included as well, so we were allowed to have breakfast, lunch and dinner at the hotel. Food was quite nice too. It was buffet, so I could literally pick whatever I wanted. Went to the gym, got a pump, that was great. Had a shower, and then I even went on a quick stroll outside because I wanted to see the big, what's it called, church? I mean, in French we say mosquée. What was the name again? I forgot the name, but that was a huge mosque in Abu Dhabi. I didn't get in because it was Friday, so I think it was like their prayer day, but I just saw it from the outside and it was beautiful. At least I got to see it, so at that stage I wasn't that upset anymore about that extra layover. Then we took off for Munich. My layover in Munich was less than an hour, so I knew that if the flight from Abu Dhabi towards Munich was late, I would miss my connection in Munich as well. We took off half an hour late, so I was like, should work if I managed to rush in the airport. And when we landed, we still had half an hour before the other plane was taken off. So I thought, I'll be able to make it. As soon as we landed, I ran across the airport. I was sweating, I was yelling at everyone, where's gate 8? And there was another girl on the plane with me doing the same itinerary as well. So that was quite funny. Obviously at that stage I wasn't laughing. But when we arrived in front of the gates, literally I think we arrived 2 minutes too late. And at that stage I was so exhausted and so over missing my flights and having to wait in airports that I started crying. Obviously she couldn't do anything about it. And then she said to me, well, you were not on that flight anyway. I was like, what do you mean? I've got my flight tickets. And she had a look and she said, no, you're on the next one. So basically what happened is that as soon as we took off from Abu Dhabi, they already knew that we were not going to make it. So they had already rescheduled us on the next flight, which was 3 hours later. So I basically rushed in the airport in Munich for nothing, because even if we made it to that door on time, we wouldn't have been able to board that plane. So we were not on it. Anyways, had to wait an extra 3 hours in Munich. At that stage, I think I was fine just because I was in Europe. So I was like, even if that plane doesn't take off, I'll be able to catch a train or something that will eventually get me to fucking Paris. And then we took off from Munich, arrived in Paris, and then afterwards had to catch a train from Paris to Strasbourg because I don't live in Paris. And then in Strasbourg, or Strasbourg for the Frenchies, my dad picked me up with my sister, and that was the end of the trip. I was so freaking happy to be there. That was such a mess. And then afterwards I tried to get in touch with, there was an Emirates, that was Etihad actually. Then I tried to get in touch with Etihad in order to get some sort of refund or compensation because of all the fucking mess that has happened to me during that trip. But I could not reach anyone, and they were all giving me different numbers, and then the numbers were sending me to email addresses and then through different services online. And when I finally found the right service online, it was saying on the website that it was under maintenance. So even today, 3 months later, I'm still not able to claim any sort of compensation for the amount of dramas that have caused me. Anyways, so that was just for the trip back home. So I think by the time I arrived in France, that was early November. I spent the first few weeks visiting family, training, creating a new routine, and straight away also started to see a psychologist, because if you've watched the previous vlog, you know that one of the main reasons why I wanted to go back home was to focus on my mental health. So I started with a psych, and that was so needed. I remember the very first session I've done with her, I sat down and I started crying for like an hour. And I'm sure she noticed that I was a mess, because she offered at the end of that session for me to come back the day after. She was that worried, I think. So yeah, I came back the day after, and from that week I kept on having 2 sessions per week. Still having 2 sessions per week, and that's helping me so much, but I will get back to that later on, because I need to tell you guys what has happened. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen what has happened to me. So basically, at that stage, I was still struggling a lot mentally, and a way for me to feel better was to train. I was training 7 days a week. Mike, if you watch this, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have done that. That's probably what has caused what I'm about to tell you. But yes, from the day that I arrived in France until the 21st of November, I basically had no rest days. At that stage, I had 2 memberships. One in a gym close to my parents' house, and one in Strasbourg, which is where my psychologist is. So I was basically doing half of my time at my parents' house. They live close to Basel in Switzerland, which is like an hour from Strasbourg with the train, and half of my time either at my sister or at my grandparents' house in Strasbourg whenever I had my 2 psychologist appointments, because I had them on Tuesday and Thursdays, which means that I was basically staying in Strasbourg from Tuesday to Thursday onwards every single week. And on the I think it was the 21st of November, I took the train, went to Strasbourg to have my psychologist appointment, but before that, I went to the gym. If you're from the area, the gym that I'm training at in Strasbourg is called One Fitness. It is a sick gym with great equipment. That's basically the best gym in the area for bodybuilders. They've got hack squat, pendulum squat, T-bars, they've got everything. And I really enjoy training there. That was my highlight of the week, because the gym close to my parents' house is a basic fit, so it's very basic minimum equipment, pretty much like fitness first. If I had to compare, fitness first for basic feats and World Gym for One Fitness. So I was super pumped, super excited to train because training is what keeps me sane, right? So start warming up to train a bar. I do my first exercise, which I think was crucifix at the cables. Then I did a chest supported raise with the dumbbells. And then afterwards, my third exercise was shoulder press. I think I had 2 top sets, 6 to 10, with like 3 seconds negative, 2 seconds pause at the bottom. And then I had one backup set, which was 12 to 15. Oh, by the way, I was really happy with my performance on that day. I felt so strong. I was increasing the load and the reps everywhere. Finished my third set, so the backup set. And when I finished the last rep, so the rep 15, I did that 3 second negative, 2 seconds pause at the bottom. And instead of just dropping the weights on the floor, I did like the negative part of bicep curl. I have no idea why I did that, because usually I would just drop them. So I did that, and as I did that, like slow and controlled movement, and I wasn't even... Sorry. What was I saying? I think I've got ADHD, by the way. If my phone's ringing or something, I would get distracted, as you just noticed. That wasn't even heavy, by the way. It was 12.5 kg dumbbells because that was my backup set. And I was pretty cooked from the previous sets as well. So I did that, I stood up, put the dumbbells back on the rack, and then I grabbed my phone to check what exercise was next. And as I did that, I noticed a huge lump, an egg on my elbow. It was huge, that big. I started touching and it was rock hard. So I thought that's a bone for sure. I thought I dislocated my elbow by doing that fucking negative part of a bicep curl that I shouldn't have done anyways. But it wasn't painful. So I thought, I don't know what it is, but it's not painful, so I'm just not gonna worry. And I got up and I started walking to do my next exercise, which was a standing lat raise on the machine. So at that stage, no worry whatsoever. I was like, yeah, fine. I could move my arm, I was so fine. So I started walking, and as I warmed up on that standing lat raise machine, I felt like a slight pull. It wasn't extremely painful, it was more like a discomfort. At that stage, I started to freak out a little bit. So I went to the front desk and I asked where was the closest hospital to get it checked. And as I showed it to him, he was like, oh my god, well, he started freaking out, and I was like, it's fine, like I'm not in pain or anything. He started freaking out. He was like, oh well, let me ask my manager if I can drive you to the hospital, to the emergency department. In the end, he was not allowed to drive me there for insurance reasons. He wasn't allowed to leave. Normally they were meant to call the paramedics to come and pick me up and drive me to the hospital. But guys, I have no insurance back home in France because I have been living overseas for 7 years, so I don't have the carte vitale anymore, which is like the Medicare in Australia. So when they said to me, oh, we have to call the paramedics, I started freaking out. I was like, no, don't do that, I don't have any insurance, I'll just go there on my own. So that guy from the front desk, he put the address of the closest hospital on my phone. I got on the train and I went there on my own. I was on the train, it started to be a little bit more painful, and I realized as well that I had to hold my arm like that. I could not let it hang because it was pulling. I just felt like if I let my arm hang, it's going to snap exactly right here. So I was holding my arm, and as I arrived at the emergency, I told them, hey, I think I dislocated my elbow. Got a huge lump. So then they asked me to remove my jacket, and as I removed the jacket, there's nothing. There was literally nothing, no lump, no egg. And I was like, did I just put it back in place? And in my head, I started to be reassured. I was like, oh my god, it's fixed. I was so close to just say to them, well, it's fine then, I'm just gonna go back home or whatever, because, you know, the bone is back in place. But obviously it didn't work that way. They then started to do some tests. So I had to move my hand, my arm, and then at some stage the doctor asked me to squeeze my bicep to contract, and I couldn't do it. I tried and I felt like nothing was happening here. This is when it clicked. I told my bicep. I was like, it's the biceps. It's 100% sure it's the biceps. And I started crying. Instantly, when I couldn't squeeze my bicep anymore, I started crying because in my head I was already thinking of the recovery and also the fact that I was probably going to have surgery on it. Anyways, I did an X-ray. Obviously the X-ray didn't show anything. I was a little bit confused, by the way, why they wanted to do an X-ray, because I knew at that stage that it was the muscle and not the bone, but they did it anyway. That day was so long. I spent the whole day at the emergency department, had to wait for the results of the X-ray, came back showing nothing. Then I had to do, what's it called, an echography. By the way, if my English has gotten shit, it's because I've been in France for now November, December, January, 2.5 months, and I'm spending most of my time speaking French. So I know that my English has gotten bad. I'm not speaking English really often, unless when I do my check-ins for my English speaking clients, which is like once a week. So yeah, if my English has gotten weird and it's not as good as the previous videos, you know why. What was I saying? Yes, echography, ultrasound. So they did the ultrasound, and when they were doing it, they could see that something was happening, but because the hematoma was so big, they could not see what was torn, how big, how damaged it was. The only thing they could see was that something has happened there for sure. When you pull a muscle, there's like heaps of water, and that was the lump that I've seen previously when I tore the bicep, the huge egg that was just water. And when they saw that, and knowing the fact that I'm a bodybuilder and that I'm a personal trainer, they knew that they had to do the MRI fast, because with this kind of injury, if you let it sit and if you don't do the right things straight away, it can have an impact on how well the muscle is going to recover. So as soon as they saw that something was going on there, straight away they sent me to the MRI. I was in that tunnel MRI thing for so long. I started to have a panic attack. I'm not claustrophobic, but that thing, guys, was so long and so loud. I'm not sure what happened there. I went in, I was laying on my back, and after 20 minutes or so, they said that they had to move me, flipped me on the side, and I was like this. It was so uncomfortable because at that stage I couldn't straighten my arm fully. But in order for them to see things clearly, they had to put my arm flat. So they had to put the weight on my hand in order to keep the whole thing flat. So that was really, really, really uncomfortable. I was so close to press that little button thing so they get you out of here. Anyways, they got me out. I had to wait for like 15 minutes, and then the orthopedic surgeon came to see me. I tore the bicep, but not completely, and on the part of the bicep that I've torn, they could not do any surgery on it. So basically what he said to me is that it would have been better to tear my biceps completely, because I would have had surgery on it and recover 100%, obviously after time, rehab and stuff. But apparently what I torn was very, very not common, especially considering how light it was. So they were all very confused, and the guy was very sorry for me because he said that with the injury that I've got, it's never going to get back to what it was before. It's like when you cut your skin, there's like a scar that is now your new skin, but that tissue is not as strong as the initial one. So that's basically what he explained my injury was, that with time it was going to recover, but not with the initial tissue, and that this tissue was weaker, and that I'll always have to be extremely careful when I grab a weight or when I lift a weight, that I'll probably always have some sort of pain or discomfort, that my biceps weren't going to be symmetrical anymore, which when you do bodybuilding, that's like one of the most important things, actually get scored on how symmetrical your body is. So I freaked out, I was crying, I messaged my coach, I was like, my career is over, that's it. The bicep is just so important, especially that I'm right-handed, so I do everything with my right hand. But even though I don't train arms specifically, I don't isolate my arms, I never train biceps, I never train triceps. When you do a movement such as a row, when you do chin-ups, you always use your biceps. Shoulder press, you use your biceps all time. So for me, having that injury, Plus the way it happened was just so random. It's not as if I did anything crazy. It's not as if I skipped the warm-up. But now obviously thinking back, I know that that was probably because I wasn't recovered enough, that I was training too much. On top of that, as I mentioned, I was still such in a bad headspace, and obviously where the mind goes, the body follows. So I can only blame myself for that. Anyways, now we're actually 8 weeks after the injury and I'm much better. I'm definitely not where I was before, but I'm okay. I started training upper body this week again. So I had 6 weeks of a lower body training program only, which was quite intense. Quite fun as well. I was training 4 days a week and it was a mix between quads and posterior chain. At the beginning, I was very frustrated. I had to keep the sling for a week, and then after that I had to remove the sling because when you tear a muscle, you cannot keep it in the same position for too long, otherwise it's going to get atrophied. As in, muscle fibers are going to repair themselves, but they're not going to be as elastic if you keep your arm like that for too long. That's how the muscle fibers are going to recover, which means that if this happens, you won't be able to get your range anymore. And that's somehow what has happened to me, because after a whole week with a sling, when I took it off, it was still so painful. I don't think that I've ever had an injury that was so painful like that ever in my whole life. I broke my shoulder, I broke my knee, but it was not as painful as the biceps. So even though it wasn't painful when I got injured, the recovery was next level painful. I'll probably insert some clips as well of the bruise that I had, because basically I tore my bicep on 9 centimeter. So it was like all this part, it popped here and went down there on 9 centimeter. That was full on. And then when I took the sling off, it was that painful that I was constantly holding my arm like that. So I was somehow still having a sling, if that makes sense, because I could not let my arm hang. It was too painful. My arm was basically stuck like that. I could not go any deeper than that. So after the first week, because I was constantly holding my arm anyway, I decided to keep wearing the sling, and I ended up wearing the sling for 3 weeks instead of 1, which means that after the 3rd week, I think my biceps started to get atrophied, and I went to see a doctor because I started to worry. At the emergency, they did not recommend any physio or anything. They just said that I needed to wait 6 weeks before I could start lifting 500 grams again. But they did not give me any advices on how to recover properly or what to do. They just said 1 week with the sling, and then afterwards start moving it again and slowly get back to daily tasks such as cleaning the dishes and stuff like that. So I thought that's gonna be an easy recovery. I know my body, I will just, based on the pain, assess and see what I can do. But after 3 weeks, when I noticed that my arm was stuck like this, the bruise was turning black and it felt like the bruise was getting bigger and bigger every single day. After 3 weeks, I freaked out. So I went back to the GP. He gave me some cream to put on it, anti-inflammatory cream to help the bruise to go away, because basically what the GP said to me is that the bruise is so big that there's like pieces of muscle tissue stuck in my elbow, preventing me from straightening my arm. Don't know the exact words, but that was the reason why I could not move my arm. So I had to put that cream on for 8 days, and he also recommended me to see a specialist. So I saw the specialist 5 days after, and the specialist basically had a go at me for doing bodybuilding. I hate this kind of doctors that are like, you know, giving you life lessons on what you should and shouldn't do. So basically he said to me that, you know, my career was over, that no one should train that hard anyways, bullshit, whatever. But he has also recommended me to see a physio to start during the rehab, because he said that I would not get my range back unless if someone helps me to do it. So he gave me that referral to start doing the physio, and then a couple of days after I had my very first session. So the first session, I remember that was probably one of the most frustrating thing ever, because I do crazy stuff with my body, you know, like lift crazy stuff. And the first session, that was basically just her massaging it. She didn't do anything else. Then after that, I started to have 2 physio sessions per week, and little by little we started to do more. She started to do things to increase my range, so she was trying to push against my arm, asking me to resist her, and then slowly trying to get a little bit more range back. And every time I would come back, I would notice that my range would have improved. And outside of the 2 physio sessions, she gave me exercises to do on my own as well, such as, for example, I had like a little ball that I had to squeeze just to send some blood, some fresh blood into my hand, because something that I noticed, guys, is that this hand was constantly frozen because I had such a bad circulation in my arm that my fingers were always frozen. Plus, on top of that, I wasn't moving my arm much, so it was even more cold. Anyways, I had to wear a glove just on that hand, and I always had to put my hand against the heater. Anyways, so exercises for the circulation, exercises to work on my range. I was also doing exercises at home with my dad. He would do the same drills. It started to get better, so with the cream, the bruise started to go away. As the bruise was going away, I was getting more range as well. It was still very uncomfortable, and I think the thing that scared me the most was the fact that I could not let my arm hang until the end. I think that was week 5, so literally 2 or 2.5 weeks ago, that I started being able to let my arm hang again. So around week 5, the exercises that she gave me was basically to let my arm hang. At the beginning, it was just for a few minutes. Obviously, whenever I was outside of the house and it was like people on the street, I was always carrying my arm like that, because I was so scared that by having my arm here, someone would bump into my arm and snap it. That's how scared I was. And then at some stage, what she's done as well, that was more a mental thing, but she strapped my arm completely straight just so I would not hold it like that. And I think that has helped. We did that for like a couple of days, and then afterwards I got the confidence to let it hang without the strap. But yeah, that was literally 2 weeks ago. Like, it's pretty new for me to be able to use my arm normally again. So yeah, that was probably the scariest thing, that I was not able to let my arm hang for about 6 weeks. It's very unnatural when you think about it, you know. Even just walking, when you walk, you know, both of your arms are swinging, but this is something that we do even without noticing it. But when I started having my arm down again, I couldn't really swing it because the gravity would hurt. So I was walking with this arm, not swinging, and just swinging this arm. So it's almost as if I had to relearn how to use my arm again. That injury was fucked up. Anyways, and then after week 6, I started to have less and less pain, until one day walked in the kitchen, opened the drawer and grabbed a fried pan with my bad arm because I forgot about the injury. And as I grabbed it, I was like, I felt a pull, because obviously it wasn't 100% recovered yet. So at that stage, it started to feel so much better that I would forget about the injury until I would grab something without thinking, and then it would hurt. As I mentioned to you guys previously, the first doctor that I saw at the emergency department had said to me that after week 6 I would normally be able to lift around 500 grams. And this 500 grams, guys, that was such a mental thing, but I would feel it. As in, if I were to grab some pasta, I would grab it pain-free. But if I was to grab a bottle of milk of 1 liter or so, I would grab it and straight away feel a pull. So I could literally look at things around the house and know straight away I would be able to lift that pain-free. This would hurt. So at that stage, I was able to know I have to lift this with a good hand, I have to lift it with a bad hand. But I was somehow back to a normal life, if that makes sense. I could shower, I could apply my moisturizer, all the daily tasks, I was pain-free. At the gym, I was still training mainly lower. Mike has designed a program that was perfect for me because it was mostly machines, so I didn't have to carry a lot of plates to load and unload. And I must say that in the gyms that I was training at, I met amazing people. I always had people helping me around, which I'm really grateful for. Honestly, can't complain. And the good news is that my lower body is something that has always been behind compared to my upper body. With the feedbacks that I had from the judges and stuff, it's always been my quads, my hammies, my glutes. So the fact that I got injured with my arm somehow was a blessing, because it allowed me to catch up and focus on my lower body and build more size in my legs. So it's actually better this way around rather than me injuring my lower body and having to train upper for 6 weeks. So somehow it's a blessing. Plus, right arm is my strong arm. So something that I've noticed recently is that now that I'm back training upper body again, when I'm doing unilateral stuff such as lat raise or rear delts, my strong side has now gotten equal to the weak side. So before, I would always have to start with my left arm first and then match my performance with the strong side in order to have the left side catching up with the strong side. But right now, I'm even. So that's another blessing from the sky, I guess. And funny enough, that's also something that has happened to me in my lower body. Because of gymnastics, my good leg is the left leg. In gymnastics, we have a good leg as well. And I injured my left knee. That was 3 or 4 years ago, doing a front flip at the beach. That's how I broke my medial plateau. And I injured my strong leg. So obviously I was always hopping around on the weak leg, and then 6 weeks or so after I was able to get back into training, my weak side was even muscle-wise compared to my strong side, which means that right now on my whole body I'm even. Muscle-wise, both of my arms are even, both of my legs are even. So that was the big update with my injury. Now, this is my week 1 with my new training program. So I'm now back to 2 upper body sessions and 3. Yeah, I'm training 5 days a week now. I've got 2 upper, which are shoulders and back focused, and I've got 3 lower. And the lower body sessions are a little bit different this time. It's not quads focused or posterior chain focused. It is, let me take a look at my program. It is lower STR, lower volume, and lower glutes. So I've never had a program like that before. I'm up to the session number 4. I still have 1 to go that I'm gonna do this afternoon, and I must say that I'm really enjoying it. I don't know if it's because it somehow feels good to be back to normal, you know, and be able to train upper again and have a pump in my upper again. Obviously, right now with the upper body, I'm not doing crazy stuff. I still can't curl anything or lift anything heavy. So to give you an example, my upper body number 1, I have laying cable lat raise, got cable rear delts, I've got seated machine lat raise, I've got some dumbbell rear delts, got some incline bench, cable rear delts behind the back like that, and some incline bench pullovers with a rope as well. So all these exercises I can do because that does not involve a lot of elbow flexion. But in the upper body session that I had to do yesterday, I was actually pretty happy because I had some shoulder press to do on the machine and some dumbbell row to do on the bench. And these 2 exercises, I was quite scared because obviously that does involve some elbow flexion and some biceps. But I went quite light. I didn't go anywhere close to failure. I performed these 2 movements pain-free, which for me is a great sign that things are moving into the right direction. And I also gave it a go and I managed to do some lat pull down. Once again, very light, 20 kg, but still, I did some lat pull down, guys. That was the highlight of my day. I'll add some clips of the session that I did yesterday. It felt great. And I was actually happy because I recorded myself and I noticed that my back still had some definition. I'm not gonna lie, it hasn't been easy for me to see my body changing. So to give you a bit of an update now with where I'm at body composition wise and which stage I'm in regards to the yearly overview. Well, in the last vlog, I was in a very good spot body composition wise. I was quite lean because that was at the end of my cut. I was also extremely happy with the physique that I had. That was probably the best physique I've ever had, especially my upper body. My back was insane, capped shoulders, definition in my abs. That was honestly a physique that I was extremely proud of. And then when the injury happened, well, I saw my body changing the other way around. Obviously, I've lost muscle mass for sure, because despite being on calorie surplus between 2,700 and 3,000 calories per day, my body weight would go down. And that was extremely hard for me because I could see myself getting softer and the number on the scale was going down, which means that body composition wise, I was losing muscle tissue. I've had times where I cried because I felt self-conscious with my physique and disappointed to go backwards. I felt frustrated of not being able to train upper. Yeah, lucky I was seeing my psych 2 days per week because that helped a lot. Something that I've noticed as well is that we're always very hard on ourselves, because personally I felt like I was looking like shit. But last week I went to Tenerife. I remember seeing myself in the mirror and started thinking that I didn't look good at all, that my upper body was shit. And there's a girl who came to me in the gym. I didn't know who she was. She asked me if I was about to compete. So I was a little bit surprised because I'm definitely not about to compete. So I said to her no, and then she said, oh, because your body is literally my goal, especially your upper body. Your back looks insane. And when she said that to me, that was week 6 of not training upper. So she made my day. She made me realize that I think I look shit because I compare myself with how I used to look when I was able to train properly. But someone who doesn't know me still think that I look unbelievable. So here is your reminder, guys, that we are looking up to some people. I look up to other athletes that have a better physique than me. But some people look up to you as well. And your body might be someone else's goal. And after that chat, I definitely felt less self-conscious, more confident in my own skin. I'm still going through some days where I don't feel great. But since that day, I try to be more gentle to myself and remember that I will get back to where I was, and I will even get better than what it was. So goal-wise, at the moment, I am in a building phase, so my calories are on a surplus. So I'm going to give you my macros. I am now at 3,100 calories, proteins are 174, carbs 483, and fats 47. That's the highest my food has ever been. And I must say that for the amount of food that I'm eating on a daily basis, my body composition is still okay. And I'm actually surprised. Obviously, I do see myself putting on some body fats, but it's not moving extremely fast to the point where I freak out. Like, I still think that I look pretty lean. Body weight is around 59 at the moment. Some days I do feel a little bit more uncomfortable than others, but overall, I'm still in a spot where I feel comfortable in my own skin. Usually I start to get uncomfortable around 61, 62, but the goal with this growing phase is for me to reach 64, and then we'll probably do a mini cut just to tidy up a little bit the physique before getting back into another growing phase. at that stage. I'm unsure if I'll compete this year. I would say that I do not think, just because this year will be a huge focus on putting more size, so I will be even more competitive the next time I jump on stage, which will be for my first pro show. Unsure if I'll compete in bikini or fitness. Chances are that I'll compete in fitness because this is where my heart is, but I'm not closing any doors with the bikini category. We'll just see how things go and how my physique evolves in the next few months. Anyways, I'm going to insert now the lower body session I did in Tenerife at Duke Gym. That was such a great gym. If you guys ever go to Tenerife and you're looking for a bodybuilding vibe gym, there's two gyms that I would recommend. If you're close to Las Americas, I would recommend Hammer Strength Gym, which is like an underground gym, amazing equipment. If you're closer to Costa Adere, which is where I went last week, I would recommend Duke Gym. It's also underground and also amazing equipment. So I'll insert that session now. I'll just voice over and run you through. That was the week 6 of my lower body only training program, and that was a quads focus day. So hope you'll enjoy it. Otherwise, I think that this is pretty much it for the updates. I'm currently still in Strasbourg. I got myself an Airbnb because it's just easier for me to be in the city. At my parents' house, I do not have a car, so I was always depending on my dad. I needed to create myself a routine, be independent, go to the gym where I want to, go to the shops when I want to, hang out with my friends. It's just much easier that way. I'm unsure yet when I'll come back to Australia, because one of the reasons why I came back home for was to enjoy time with my grandpa. He is sick, he's got cancer, and for me it's really important to say bye to him and also to be there for my family, because when it will happen, it is going to be tough for everyone, especially for my grandma. As I mentioned previously, I'm still seeing the psychologist. Even though I've gotten so much better and I'm feeling so much better mentally, I still want to do a few more sessions in order to move on to the next stage of my life. At that stage, I reckon I would aim to come back to Australia mid-February, but I will book my flights last minute because there's still a lot of things that I need to sort out before flying back to Australia. So I'll keep you guys posted. I hope that you're going to enjoy this vlog slash updates of my life, of my physique, of my injury. So if you enjoyed watching this vlog, remember to like and subscribe. I hope that you're all doing great, that you've started the year the right way. I'm personally so pumped for the new year ahead. My biggest focus this year will be my mental health, because I'm such in a great spot mentally now that I do not want to get back to where I was at the end of the year last year. Yes, business is still one of my main priorities, but it's pointless to be extremely successful in your work if you're unhappy in your life. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up this vlog with a reminder that you have to put yourself first, and that you have to look after yourself, because you cannot help anyone else around you if you are not okay. So I'll leave you guys now with the training part, with a bit more technical stuff. I'm saying bye to you now. Love you loads. Thank you so much for following me and my journey. If you're not following me on Instagram yet, you can do that now at Train with Laurie. I'm more and more active on the Instagram as well. So if you like to follow my journey, I highly recommend you to follow me there. Bye peeps!
Alright, first thing first, sorry if my voice is a little bit funky. I'm currently extremely sick, but I'm committed to share that vlog by tomorrow at the latest. So here I am with my broken voice. I'm gonna run you through my whole session, starting off with a warm-up, a monster first obviously, you know, I'm a caffeine addict. That warm-up takes around 10 minutes. I start with some mobility drills on the floor, and I'm also doing some core stuff. For each of these exercises, I'm doing between 10 to 20 reps. Sometimes I'm doing 1 round, sometimes I'm doing 2 rounds. I also like to stretch my back, my thoracic, but it's not stretches where I'm going to hold a position for an extended period of time, if that makes sense. It's more of an active stretch in order to gently wake my body up and get my body ready for what's to come. Right now, I'm activating my glutes with some clamshells and some reverse hyperextensions on the floor. Warming up, guys, is so important. If you're serious about training and if it's important for you to make some gains, then you should not skip your warm-up. Trust me on that one. Since I've started taking my warm-up seriously, I've seen my body changing like it's never changed before. So yes, I understand it's a little bit more time consuming, but when designing your training sessions, you should definitely take that into consideration. Plus, I feel like taking the time to warm up puts you in a I'm about to train mode, rather than jumping straight away into your first exercise, your first working set, and having shit performance. What I'm doing with this drill is to open my thoracic because I am quite tight in that area. Funny enough, when I started doing this drill, I couldn't even look at the ceiling. That's how stiff my thoracic region was. This drill here has helped me massively with my ankle mobility, which allows you to squat deeper without having your heels lifting. All you have to do here is to stand on one leg and bounce back and forth, shift your body weight from the heel to the toes. That calf stretch feels insane, by the way. I recommend you to hold on to something because otherwise chances are that you'll fall backwards, especially if, like me, you've got a poor ankle mobility. Once that I'm done with all the activation and mobility drills, I'm also performing some quads focused split squats because obviously the session that I'm about to do is a quads focused session. I'm doing 20 reps of those and I'm performing 2 rounds. Then I'm moving on to some seated adduction that I'm going to superset with a seated abduction that is still part of the warm-up, by the way. I'm doing 20 reps and then straight into the abduction with no rest, and I'm doing 4 rounds in total. Because it's still part of the warm-up, I'm not going to the failure. I'm still chasing some sort of intensity, so my first round would be around, I would say, 6 out of 10. Then I would go up in weights for the second one and bring the intensity up to 7, then the round number 3 up to 8, and then the round number 4 I would be around 9 out of 10. After that superset, let me tell you that I'm nice and warm and more than ready to start. First exercise, we have some unilateral leg extensions with a rep range of 10 to 15. As you can see, I do have a slow tempo here. 3 seconds on the way down, 2 seconds pause at the bottom, 1 second on the way up, and 1 second pause at the top. For any unilateral exercise such as this one, I always recommend you to start with the weak side first. This is how you correct your muscle imbalances, because if you start with your strong side and you go all out, chances are that you won't be able to match your performance with the weak side, meaning that your weak side is basically going to stay weaker, and this is not what we want. So weak side first, you go all out, and then you match your performance with the strong side. Even if you feel like you still have 1, 2, or 3 reps left in the tank, you stop there. This is how you will have the weak side catching up with the strong side. When I'm done with the strong side, I've got 2 minutes to rest and I have 2 working sets here. Exercise number 2, we have the leg press with the feet low on the platform, so quads focused. And there's also a cheeky tempo here, which is 4 seconds on the way down, 2 seconds pause at the bottom, explosive on the way up, and no rest at the top, so straight back down. And as if this wasn't spicy enough, the rep range that I've got here is 15 to 20. And let me tell you that 20 reps on the leg press with a tempo like that is really not funny, but we're here for the pain. As you can see, I'm not going extremely heavy with this exercise because the point here is for me to adhere to that tempo for 20 reps and going full range at the bottom. One of the biggest mistakes that I see when I check my clients' form or when I see random people leg pressing in the gym is that some people go way too heavy too soon, meaning that they don't control the weights, they let the weights control them. And if it's too heavy, you're never going to be able to adhere to a tempo, to slow the eccentric phase of the movement down, and to hit full depth at the bottom, which is necessary if your goal is hypertrophy. 3 minutes of rest here and 3 working sets. Exercise number 3, we have my dear friend, aka the pendulum. For this exercise, I've got 2 top sets, 6 to 10 reps, and then I've got 1 backup set, which is 12 to 15 reps. Another slowest tempo here, 3 seconds on the way down, 2 seconds pause at the bottom, explosive on the way up, and no rest at the top, straight back down. Also, that was probably one of the heaviest pendulum I've ever tried. Literally, the starting resistance of that pendulum must have been around 40 kg. I'm not even kidding. That's why in an ideal world, you would want to always train in the same gym with the same equipment, so on the same machines, because from one gym to another, the same machines can feel extremely different. And not gonna lie, it can be tricky to find your starting resistance. That's why I highly recommend you to perform some warm-up sets in order to remain within the rep ranges for your working sets. Now, if you're on holidays, it's not the end of the world. Keep in mind that it might take you a little bit longer to find your working resistance. You might also have to make some changes in your usual program, and it's fine. As I always say to my clients, it's better to do something than nothing. So if your gym doesn't have a pendulum machine, you can just replace it with a hack squat or even a leg press. Anything, just do something. And if the only gym you have access to is a random hotel gym, do some goblet squats. That would do the job as well. For this exercise, I had 3 working sets and 2 minutes to rest in between each set. And as you can see, at that stage I was already cooked, but it's not over yet. Moving on to the exercise number 4, we have some unilateral leg press with a plate loaded machine. This time again, this is a quads focused variation, which means that I am putting my feet quite low on the platform in order to emphasize that knee flexion. So we really want to drive that knee over the toes. Here as well, I'm performing a bunch of warm-up sets in order to find my starting resistance. As a general rule, if you're unsure what load to use for your warm-up sets, I would recommend half the weight for half the reps. So as an example, if your usual working resistance is 30 kg and you usually have 10 reps to perform, well then you would go for 15 kg and perform 5 reps. You can do as many warm-up sets as you want, but the goal is not for you to get tired, so keep this in mind. My tempo here is 3 seconds on the way down, 2 seconds pause at the bottom, explosive when pressing the platform away from me, and then straight back down. Rep range wise here I've got 10 to 15. Once again, starting with the weak side first, going all out and matching my performance with the strong side. For this variation here, I much prefer this machine, so the plate loaded one, over a horizontal pin loaded machine, because often you can go much deeper with this machine and get a greater stretch in the quads, which is what we want in order to maximize muscle growth. If I'm being honest with you guys, that was probably the most savage quads program I've ever had. At that stage, the legs were already falling off, but it's not the end yet because we still have one more exercise to go, and what a finisher you will see in a second. I had 2 working sets here and 2 minutes to rest in between each set. And last exercise but not least, we have some Smith machine cyclist squats with the heels elevated. This one is a killer with a tempo of 4 seconds on the way down, 1 second pause at the bottom, explosive on the way up, and no rest at the top, so straight back down. I think that my coach is a little bit too obsessed with slow as tempos, but I can't blame him because I'm doing the exact same thing when I'm designing programs for my own clients. Because you guys, it's just the best way to go about it. Like, yes, it sucks and yes, it hurts, but it works so well muscle growth wise. It really forces you to control that load, to focus on the technique and to master the movement, and allows you to build that mind to muscle connection and train with an intention as opposed to just moving weights. I had 8 to 12 reps to perform on every single set, 3 working sets and 3 minutes to rest in between each set. And to finish with, I also did some calves. For the calves, I'm training them every second day, and it's basically a superset between some standing calf raise with the toes in and some seated calf raise. In that gym, they didn't have any standing calf raise machine, so I swapped it for the donkey machine, which I actually prefer because you don't have to carry the load on your shoulders. Rep range wise, I did 15 to 20 on the donkey machine, and I did 12 to 15 on the seated machine. I have 45 seconds to move from one exercise to the other, and I repeat the superset 3 times in total. I don't have any specific tempo here, but as a general rule, I would always recommend a nice and slow tempo, especially on the way down, such as 2 or 3 seconds for the eccentric part of the movements, and then you can even add 1 or 2 seconds pause at the bottom. You can also add 1 or 2 seconds pause at the top. But the main thing with this exercise, try not to bounce, try not to use the momentum, and really go full range on every single rep. Trust me, that's what's going to give you the best results. And that was me done. Let me know in comments if you enjoyed that training session, and I will see you guys next time.